So, I'm confused. PDAC 2026, Resolution Minerals, Craig Lindsay, the CEO.
CEO of U.S. Operations.
Thank you. I've read all the background on your company. I've read the news releases, I've read the overview, and I'm confused. Are you a gold company or are you a tungsten company?
Well, you are very confused because we are not just a gold company or a tungsten company, we're actually an antimony company as well, and that's really the big pitch, is critical metals with an antimony focus. We own 100% interest in something called the Horse Heaven Project in Idaho.
Great area in Idaho.
It's fantastic, and locationally we're immediately adjacent to Perpetua's stibnite mine. And the stibnite mine, Perpetua is a $4.5 billion company. We're an $80 million company. Right. We're a direct geologic analog to them in that we have a very large gold endowment, but there's also a big critical metals play here with antimony and tungsten. And what differentiates us between...
And sorry to interrupt, but antimony and tungsten are war metals. The more conflicted the world becomes, the more we need them.
Sadly, that's true, but it's just not the military side of things. It's this China story, which your listeners would be very familiar with. They process 80% of the world's antimony. They mine 60%. They've cut off supplies to the US. The current administration has a very large push on to develop domestic supplies of these critical metals. Antimony and tungsten are very high in their list. And how we are positioning ourselves, the antimony at the Horse Heaven Project, the average grades that we've pulled out of historic stockpiles average 40%. And when you look at the Perpetua story next door, the average grade is less than 0.5%.
Wow.
So we are looking at stripping high-grade veins from within the existing disturbed area and become an antimony production story.
So these are, all three metals are in the same vein?
It's a good, no, this is a 15,000 acre project.
Okay.
We have something called Antimony Ridge, which is antimony focused, but it also has silver and gold. Gold is associated with the antimony at Horse Heaven. You get anywhere from 1 to 4 grams per ton gold. We've had hits of up to 1,420 grams per ton silver within these high grade veins. And then there's a second target that we call Golden Gate, which is gold and tungsten focused. Right. And that's exciting, and that's what creates the confusion in our company, because the first hole that I drilled last fall was 253 meters of 1.5 grams per ton gold, starting at surface and ending in open-ended mineralization.
How deep?
It ended at 250 meters in open-ended mineralization. So this year we're going back, we're going to drill 30,000 feet, we're going to triple the drilling, and instead of the deepest hole I drilled last year was 1,200 feet, we're going to be popping 1,500 foot holes. I've actually got a drill that'll go down, a core drill that'll go down 2,000 feet. It is, but when you've got gold that doesn't stop, you've got to keep chasing.
You got to test it.
Absolutely.
So, what's the plan to help dum-dums like me understand the company?
Well, location number one, we're in Idaho, very mining friendly state, and we're immediately adjacent to one of America's next large gold and antimony projects. We're in critical metals, don't have to tell that story, and then it's the right time. We have a very unfortunate situation evolving globally in the Middle East, and from a military defense strategic metals perspective, the United States is in a very challenging position. They consume about 25,000 tons of antimony a year, and they're producing nothing. So we can play a critical role in addressing that, and not just addressing it 3 or 4 years out when the stibnite mine is going into production, but immediately when we get a permit to start stripping out some of this high grade.
Where do you process it?
That's the whole supply chain with critical metals is obviously the biggest challenge right now. How are we addressing that? we've taken this high-grade material, plus we have low-grade 1 to 2% antimony. We've shipped it to 2 labs, ANSO in Australia, Kingston Process Metallurgy, just down the street at the associated with Queen's University, to develop a process flow sheet. I've also hired a guy who's a PhD metallurgist, who's Dr. Adam Roper, who's working with us full-time. He's got quite a bit of experience developing flow sheets for critical metals, lithium, as well as things like tungsten and antimony. So we're scratching, admittedly, we're scratching our heads a little bit, but to answer your question, if I pull this 40% off, I can ship it to, U.S. Antimony is looking for ore.
They need feedstock.
Everyone's looking for feedstock. So that is, we're also talking to CPRO about some modular manufacturing processing facilities that we'd bring on site. I just acquired 25 acres of private land immediately adjacent to our project, which is on federal land, so permitting is a challenge. So Peter, it's probably, and you're familiar with this in your various endeavors, the permitting story, it's not the processing story that scares me, it's the permitting story. So it's a bottleneck. We are on...
Sounds like you're on top of it, though.
Yeah, we are. We're working with the National Permitting Council. We filed for Fast 41 coverage. There's all sorts of efforts that are being made to streamline permitting in the U.S., but it still remains, to me, the biggest challenge that we have.
Okay, so Resolution Minerals trading on the ASX as RML.
RML, yep.
I've seen a lot of Australian companies lately do deposit receipts or look at other ways of accessing the US market directly. And I don't want you telling me anything out of school, but I would expect that to be on the board of directors playlist.
Yeah, well, it's actually, we've already announced it publicly. We've got an ADR program in place. We trade on the OTCQB right now, but we've filed an application for NASDAQ. So I actually just returned from New York, talking to bankers down there. Ton of interest, and one of the takeaways, which I haven't seen in the longest time, is that generalist funds are getting into critical metals. They want exposure to this stuff. Right. So, we're a US-based project. It's critical to the United States. It's becoming very topical from an investor perspective. Yes, silver's hot, gold's going crazy, copper's very hot, but the critical metal story is alive and well in the US market. And so we want to capitalize on that and share our story with US investors. And it's capital markets are deep there, a lot of money available. The Australian market's been fantastic. I actually haven't had a lot of exposure to the ASX historically, but I've been involved, I've been spending a bit of time down in Australia over the last 2 years. The appetite for these kind of...
There's an enthusiasm.
It's infectious. They're excited. I hate to use the term deal junkies, but they love stories. They're engaged with you. And if a guy in Australia, you sit down with a guy in Perth and pitch him your story, and it's not for him, he's going to go open 3 more doors. It doesn't work for me, but talk to this guy, this guy, or this guy. It's very different from... and if he likes the story, you'll arrive in Perth on a Sunday and you'll have a term sheet on Friday. And I'm not exaggerating. So the Australian market is wonderful, but as this business grows, it's going to be capital intensive. And it's obviously a US-centric story, just locationally. Right. So NASDAQ's a good spot for us, I think.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on what's happening. Resolution Minerals, RML on the ASX for now. Craig, thank you for coming in and chatting.
Peter, great to catch up with you.